May have to. Okay, welcome to Getting to Know Jesus. We are in lesson 108, and that's in volume 9, over on pages 21 to 31. The lesson note, or Bible text is just one page this time. It's not unusual, but just one page, page 22, and our lesson notes are on pages 23 through 29. So Jesus is going to teach about marriage. We're going to talk about until death separates us. And here's our little timeline. We're right down here at the tail end of Jesus' ministry. When you got married for the very first time, you believed that this was going to be a lifetime relationship. Very few people get married thinking it's only temporary. Now I know that there are some today that get married thinking, oh well, we'll be married until we get tired of each other and then we'll go find somebody else.
Irrecyclable dispersion.
But most people get married because I found the love of my life and we're going to be happy together and we're going to live together as husband and wife until we get old and old and older and older. Now some of them don't think about getting old yet, but they'll get there if they stick with it. And that's really the original idea. I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. Then a month later they're having a fight and they're wondering why they got married. But that's another subject. We all want our marriages to work and we want to live our lives happily ever after. We don't realize that happily ever after is lived one day at a time. And so today was a great day. Tomorrow was an okay day. The other day was what am I doing here today? But you hang in there because the next day is going to be a better day. And we work at it one day at a time. And marriages require work in order to be happy. We then become disillusioned when conflict comes into and our happiness becomes unhappy. What is God's design for marriage? Now I know it's a big issue even in our government and in our social agenda today. Oh well, we're going to decide what marriage is and what marriage isn't. We know more about marriage than God does, and so we're going to do it our way. But in this class, we're going to look what Jesus says about it, and we're going to do it His way. Amen. And that settles it.
Yes.
Now we might try to exercise some compassion towards those who differ with us, but we're going to stand firm that if Jesus says it, that settles it. And that's the end of the discussion. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 19, the second part of verse 1 through verse 6, and in Mark chapter 10, third part actually of verse 1 in that case. We split that verse into three parts, down to verse 9. Jesus leaves Galilee. By the way, He will never again return to Galilee before He's crucified. So He's leaving Galilee for the last time on His way down to Jerusalem. He travels over to Perea, down the east side of the Jordan River. Large crowds of people will follow Him and eager to hear Him teach. On this occasion, Jesus is asked by some Pharisees about His views about marriage and divorce. It might be a good thing for us to take seriously what Jesus has to say here. Here is our map. We presume that Jesus is somewhere up in here. The Samaria actually starts down a little further here. I think Israel may be in Galilee. Yeah. So somewhere in here is Samaria, and it comes down to just above Jerusalem, roughly. So Jesus comes down, he'll cross over to the far side of the Jordan River, a little blue thing, that's the Jordan River, and he'll come down, this is Perea, over here, and he's going to come down towards Jericho. And we'll be there not tonight, but in the next few lessons, we're going to be down to Jericho on the way to Jerusalem. God's design for marriage. Matthew chapter 19, verse 1b to 4. Mark chapter 10, verses 1 through 6. Jesus had finished saying these things. He left Galilee and went to the region of Judea on the other side of the Jordan. Large crowds followed Him, as was His custom, and He taught them and healed them there. Now, I noticed in the book I had the title Jesus Teaches and Heals and Teaches, and that's where that comes from. Although we're going to be talking more about what He teaches than we are about His healing. But He's still in the healing business. He's not done with that yet. Some Pharisees came to Him and tested Him, and they asked, by asking, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Well, the courts in America say, yeah, sure, anyway, who cares? Why haven't you read what did Moses command you? Mark records Jesus saying. And they replied, well, they said Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and send her away. It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law. I don't think Jesus is happy with them about that.
No.
Jesus replied, at the beginning, in the beginning of creation, God made them male and female, not male and male.
That's right.
And
That's
we'll
right.
get back with that in just a
That's
minute.
right.
But
Get out
first,
of it, Steve.
we're going to go here and
Not
talk
Tom
about,
and Jerry.
Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
That's right.
Yeah.
we're going to talk about God's design for marriage. Yes. You see,
Even
the Pharisees have a very loose attitude towards marriage. I've alluded to this before, but this is where it really comes out into play. Some sources say that a Pharisee that had not divorced his wife was not considered a good Pharisee. So regardless how much you love this little gal that you married whenever you got married, okay, now you're supposed to get tired of her, throw her away, go get another one, otherwise you're not a good Pharisee. Because they misinterpret, how many Christians do the same thing? They misinterpret the Mosaical law to make it say what they think they want to say, instead of examining the whole word to see if that's what it really does say.
Isn't
You
that
know,
why they have so many different religions, though?
that's why we have so many different denominations. I read my presuppositions into it and I interpret it that way, or I read this verse without seeing the paragraph or the book to see what the context is, and I take it out of context and run all the way over the place with it. George?
What in the world led them to such a understanding?
Well, okay, real brief history. God said marriage is the union of one man and one woman for life.
Right.
But when Israel went into the promised land, God said, don't marry with those people. What did Israel do?
Marry.
They married with those people.
Yeah.
Interracial marriage. Now, some people would say, well, God bans interracial marriage. No, I don't think so.
No.
But back then, he did. But it wasn't because of racial grounds.
No,
it was because of
grounds.
religious
Yes.
grounds.
Yes.
And, of course, the Bible does teach in the New Testament that we should not be equally yoked with the unbelievers.
Yeah.
So what happens was they had already married these pagan wives, and so Moses commanded them, or it wasn't Moses, it was Joshua commanded them, divorce your pagan wives, get them out of your lives, because they're going to influence you away from God. You women have a very powerful influence on your man, whether you know that or not. And yeah, they can be sometimes led around by the nose. And
Where's your
Where's the
nursery?
verse that says that?
we don't have time to look it up right now,
It's in
but
Genesis.
there's actually several verses in the Old Testament that will.
It just
Yeah.
But what they did,
Genesis.
the Pharisees, where Moses told them to divorce their wives, and you go look at that, would be in Exodus through Deuteronomy. It's in there somewhere,
Not Genesis.
Yep.
and in the Old Testament, probably a couple of times at least, and you can see what it said. And so they took that verse out of context. They didn't understand why that verse was in there. They didn't do their reading like they're supposed to, like I'm trying to tell you to do. And so they lifted it out, and they have this attitude that I've got to divorce my wife. So when they question Jesus in what appears to be an attempt to justify divorce, Jesus reminds them of the law of Moses.
Not so from the beginning.
They try to counter this, saying that Moses commanded them to divorce. Jesus reminds them that God designed marriage and divorce was only because they were marrying people who would lead them away from following God. Now, those who want to say something about racial marriages, Moses married a Cushite woman. She was probably very darkly complected. And so that would,
I bet. Oh, Andrew's not here.
dark complected would be an interracial marriage. But evidently, she followed God. There was no instruction to divorce her, and she seemed to be, is what my husband says, and went along with that very well. So, but a lot of other wives that the Jewish people had married, and they didn't maybe have as intimate and passionate a connection with God, that does make a difference. How passionate you are in your walk with God is going to influence who you're going to marry, and it's going to influence the path of your marriage. And if you're not connected, well, then you wonder why you have problems. We have become a culture that has adopted the Pharisaical view towards marriage as a way to soothe the pain in our own selfish unwillingness to keep our marriages in good health. So, in other words, we will get selfish, and well, I'm not getting what I want. I'm not getting my way, and then we decide, well, that person's worthless. I'm going to go water the grass over here, and oh, this person's really wonderful, and they let me have my way, and we go married to them, we find out they don't let us have our way either. Many have been told that they have a right to be happy. And when their spouse and they disagree on some issue, this selfish right overshadows their love for one another, and the tension escalates until they change their attitudes towards each other or they terminate the marriage. Now, sometimes they'll get their head down and, you know what, I'm not acting loving towards a woman I promised to give myself to for better or worse, richer or poorer, sickness and in health. And I'm not treating her the way I promised to God I'm going to treat her. And so I've got to change my attitude to be the loving husband I need to be, so my wife can say, he's loving me, I'm feeling his love. And I guarantee you guys, if your wife feels that you genuinely love her, she will make sure you feel that she genuinely loves you. We need to remember that God designed the institution of marriage, and our challenge is to work to make it a successful relationship for life. We can also observe the difference between a godly-based marriage and a man's-based marriage. When man decides, oh, this is marriage, and then he gets into trouble, he bails out, and you've got that stigma now, I'm divorced. I mean, I failed at marriage 101. I failed at love. As you go into any definition of love that's godly, love is not something the other person earns. Love is something you give whether they deserve it or not. And if you think that's something wrong with that, you go ask God how come He loves you.
There you go.
How many of you honestly think you deserve God's love, huh? Oh, man, that arm's awful heavy. Just can't seem to get it up there.
Yeah.
We are loved by God's grace. And your spouse may have turned out to be something whole different than what they sold you when they were dating. But you don't love them because of what they've delivered. You love them because you are determined to love that person whether they're lovable or not. So our challenge is to make it work by God's standards. And God's way is always better. Christy.
Is it good to balance wife happy, husband happy, both be balanced equal, happy? Or
On a general rule, yes. But if one person's happy and the other person's unhappy, maybe the happy person needs to say, is there anything I can do to help make this other person happy? And the person that's unhappy needs to examine themselves and say, why am I unhappy? Is there something I need to change in myself in order to change my relationship with this person who's trying to be loving to me and I'm not being loving to them?
It's like my brother. My brother's a Christian. He married a little Asian atheist. They've been married for, I don't know, over 20 years. But their marriage is, he doesn't believe in divorce. He's been married 3 times before. And he doesn't want to divorce her. She's way older than he is. And he puts up with a lot of stuff. He says he puts up. 2 sides of every story. I see what her, and I see him, and I know what he was like. And still like that. But that was such an unevenly yoked couple. You know what he was hoping? He was hoping that he could bring her to God. That's what his whole thing was.
I'll tell you from observation, if you don't bring them to God before the wedding ceremony, the chances of doing it after are not impossible. They're just much more difficult.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I've got them hooked. Why do I have to change? So, yeah, if I didn't see her in church on Sunday, I wasn't going to see her on a date on Saturday night.
She was upset because he tithes. Why does he send all his money there? Why does he tithe?
Well, she didn't believe
Because
Well, she was an atheist.
yeah, he's just prayed that somehow he can communicate God's love to her, and
Yeah, well.
maybe that could still change as long as they're aligned.
Yeah.
That could still change.
Yes.
And I've seen some wait a long, long time, but I've seen some that have been won by a godly spouse who didn't badger or belittle or try to force, but just patiently loved and waited. Jim?
What are some of the things that cause the fire of marriage to go out?
We get too focused on our own selfishness.
Yeah.
Then what-
I want.
Too focused.
Money or something.
I want it my way.
Selfish,
I have a right.
selfish instead of selfless.
Yeah.
Selfish instead of selfless. Yeah. Well, let's go on a little bit further, but just remember, notice the difference between a godly marriage and a man-based marriage. You look at a couple who've been married a long time. 38, 48, 50. We've got, how long have they?
Cindy and Norm?
Yeah, 48 years, your
48.
sister, and Marvin Carice about
Oh,
55 years.
oh, they're, they just,
55,
honey,
55.
I've been married 48 years.
65 over here.
Glenn.
65 years you
Glenn,
had?
Glenn,
Richard and Sandy.
Clarice and Marvin, we just
13th
celebrated their
for Dad.
60th, remember?
60th birthday anniversary, that's right. Okay, so see, hey, it can work if you will work at making it work instead of working at trying to get your way and messing it up. Well, let's go on. Marriage is one man and one woman.
Yes.
Matthew 19, first part of verse 5 and Mark 10, verse 7. Jesus said, he's continuing from that previous, the husband shall leave his father and his mother and be cleaved to his wife, and the two shall become one. He says, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, not his boyfriend or not her girlfriend. That's not the way God designed us. Jesus makes it very clear that God designed marriage to be the union of one man and one woman. He made male and female, not male and male. And when they get married, they leave their family of origin and they create a new family unit. And into this union, they create children who will one day pick up a spouse of the opposite sex and create their own family unit. And so life goes on. This is God's design from the day of creation. This earth is at least, and I don't really believe it's any older than 6,000 years old. But for 6,000 years, that's been the norm. And so all of a sudden, somebody thinks they can go around changing the rules. Well, that's been tried before, and Sodom and Gomorrah got hellfire and brimstone rained on them for that.
Yeah.
And a few other governments and societies and cultures have self-destructed because of their, in part, of their sexual immorality. A simple class in anatomy. Let's see. Yeah, okay. A simple class in anatomy will establish physically that man and woman are designed for each other. Any other type of sexual union will not reproduce. So those who want to try to say there's a gene that made me this way, that's absolutely scientifically and spiritually impossible.
Yeah.
Because
They were born
if the
that-
male will be united with the male, they can't produce a child.
Same thing with animals,
I
you know.
know they do.
And if the female mate with a female, they can't produce a child.
I know, but same thing with bestiality.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
disgusting as all
Yeah.
It
get out.
is.
But they, you know, there are people
It's-
that are sick like that.
There are people that are
I've
sick
seen,
like that.
I've seen it before.
But see, again, anatomy will tell you that that's not
It's not possible.
normal.
Disgusting.
And if they did with the animal, it dies. Whatever they have, it
Yeah,
dies.
if anything comes out of it, it
I've
dies.
seen it before
I
now.
know, it's disgusting.
Awful.
A woman will try to go to a sperm bank and they'll try to retrieve it and have it done that way.
Sperm bank.
Yes.
Where did they get the sperm bank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duh.
Why?
From a guy.
Why?
If we would get married and have our spouse, children through our spouse, we would not need a sperm bank. And if by for some reason the man or the woman is sterile and incapable of producing the sperm or the egg appropriately, that's okay. God can still love them. They can still have a beautiful union. I knew a family when I was preaching in Richards, Missouri, going to Ozark Bible College, that were unable to have children. They've been married well over 50 years. They were very happy with each other, even though they had no children. They adopted my wife and me and our son became their little grandson. They just kind of adopted him as that and just loved on him until we moved out to California. So, a simple class of anatomy will establish that this is not normal. Hence, there's no gene. Our psychological makeup confirms that we work best when we learn to appreciate our mate's strengths and differences as tools to help us become better persons instead of areas to create conflict and destroy the love that we promised each other when we got married. Men may understand men, and women may communicate better with women, but the bottom line is that God designed us to complement each other, not be in a conflict-free environment with each other.
But you know, with women though, with women we learn how to be intimate with our discussions.
Yeah.
And that's what teaches us how to get along with the men. Because men, they only talk about certain things.
Men are very surface, and yeah, we
It's like you
more
focus
likely to
on
be
a
intimate.
car or sport, and that's what they have in their mind. Women want to talk about other things.
Women talk
Men
more
don't
about
want-
relationships.
Yeah, and they're all about improving what they have. But you need your girlfriends in your life
That's right.
to help support that.
Yeah,
But
and
they
that's
don't
very,
take place
that's not
of-
true.
It does not take the place of the man, of the husband.
That's right. Because when we look at ourselves, there are things in me that Sylvia compliments. Things that I'm not so good at that she's great at. And there's things in me that she needs me in her life to help make it complete. And if you're smart and you look at your marriage, you'll see that there are things in your spouse that complete you as a person. And if you'll focus on that instead of, they're different than me, why can't they be more like me? You'll get along a whole lot better.
Say that again. Say that part again.
There are things in your spouse that will complete you as a person. And if you focus on them as a partner, as completing you, you'll get along a whole lot better than you will if you say, well, they're not like me, I wish they changed.
That's
What?
the trouble.
One thing I learned years
Read the
ago,
book, Men Are From
if you don't like me the way I am now, you would not like me if I changed, if you were able to change me the way you wanted me to change.
See, that's the thing with a lot of relationships, though, is that people try to change each other. They don't see the things that they fell in love with. They
Yeah.
see the things that they can change, when this is the same person that they were before they were married.
Men want to
The
control
general
women.
tendency is
Men
men want to
want
control,
and women
women
want-
want to change.
Yeah.
How's that working for you? The more we try to control, or the more you try to change, the more the wall goes up, and I don't want to play that game. Let's go and take a look
Read the
at
book,
the
Men Are
olive
From
trees
Mars,
in the
Women Are
Judean
From
countryside.
Right.
Women are from Venus.
I don't know if these olive trees are outside of Jerusalem or somewhere else, but that's something that Jesus probably walked by.
Jim tell us where that's at.
Huh?
Where's
Yes,
that?
Jim.
So that-
I've been in the ministry for 50 years in the city church. I did a lot of counseling with marital problems. I think I could write a book.
I bet you could.
But one thing is a lack of development of love between husband and wife.
Uh-huh.
They settle down, she will always be mine or he will always be mine. Taking each other for granted. Then someone else comes into the picture. Lack of control of emotions on the part of the person whose vision is elsewhere. Things begin to cool off. Lack of communication between husband and wife.
Cooling off at home, warming up over
There
here.
are a lot of reasons why.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons is the lack of developing love. Love begins to grow cold. And there's lack of personal attention to each other. No effort seems to be moving in that direction. And then couples begin to move apart from each other until they get to the place they're cold in their love for each other. And someone else comes along, they're more attractive and so forth.
still
A lot of
so-
reasons,
Yeah.
a lot of reasons.
There's a lot, we could spend a lot of time on that.
I want to read this out of your notes.
Well, this is
right
out of my
here.
book.
Yeah, Jesus rightly assesses the reason for all divorce. It is the hardness of the heart, selfishness of the individual.
Yeah.
Getting a divorce is saying, I am selfish, I don't keep my promises, I don't know how to love unconditionally, and I don't trust God to be in control of my marriage. Perfectly put.
The 4 C's.
I actually got that from someone else, but yes, very well put. Marriage is a lifetime,
Quote.
let's go on here. Marriage is a lifetime covenant. Matthew 19 verses 5b through 6.
That one?
Yeah.
Mark 10 verses 8 and 9. The two will become one flesh, we got from the tail end of that other verse. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not
Separate.
separate.
That's what it's written in your Bible.
Oh, we need to be teaching this to every young couple. This is why I will not marry a couple if I haven't done pre-marriage counseling with them. I need to teach them a few things to make sure they're going to make that marriage last a lifetime. Jesus concludes his introductory comments by reminding the Pharisees and anyone else listening that marriage is a lifetime covenant. The sexual consummation symbolizes that union, and anything else is in violation of God's design. That makes divorce not an option. This is also a declaration that sexual intimacy is for marriage, and anything else is sin. The sexual relationship is the most intimate way that a man and woman can share and confirm their love with each other. And if you've shared and confirmed your love with this person, this person, this person, this person, then when you come to this person, you want to say to them, I love you more than anybody else. What are you going to do? Because you've already done that with this. That's why they call it going all the way. If you save it for marriage, then when you and your spouse come together on that honeymoon night and that wedding bed, you can honestly and truthfully say, nobody has seen me or shared with me in the intimacy of what you and I are participating in right now. Save it for marriage. The sexual union is, okay, as I've already commented, God intends for marriage to be for life. We also admit that we prefer that marriage be for life. Virtually no couple gets married with the idea of getting a divorce. We're seeking a lifetime of love with that one person. We want to believe that this someone to whom we are pledging our marriage relationship will be faithful to us, loving to us, and a part of our happiness for the rest of our lives. And by the way, everyone admires a couple that have been married and remain faithful to each other for life. You always, so how long have you been married? 48 years? Wow! How wonderful! 60 years? Wow! I hope I live that long. 25 years? Great! How did you guys do it? We always appreciate a couple that's been married for life. It's only man's own selfishness and sinfulness. I know that's kind of a redundant term, but it's only selfishness and sinfulness that we get upset with that person we promise to love and cherish for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until we are separated by death. Everyone who goes through a divorce goes through pain and suffering. And those of you who have been divorced will confirm with me that more problems are resulted or come out of a divorce that would have been there if you'd have stayed together and worked it out and made the marriage work. I have heard time and time again, Family Life talks about people that were having, their marriage was just going that way, and they go to a Family Life conference, and before the conference is over, they're back like cuddling like their first dating. Or a couple was headed down that even had divorce papers filed, they were just waiting for it to become final, and somehow they went to a marriage conference and they decided not to get divorced. Or a couple's having trouble, but they stick it out. And 5 years later, they're the happiest married couple in the whole wide world. You just keep working at it, one day at a time. Don't quit. Marriage is a lifetime covenant.
I wish to share one thought which I think is very important in successful marriage. It is controlled emotion. Now, there's a family in our church, about 35 years of age, maybe 38, somewhere along in there. If there was a family in our church that was number one, I would say that's the family. One afternoon about 4 o'clock, the wife stopped at my place, handed me a letter and says, I want you to read this. The letter was a goodbye to her husband because he lacked control over his emotion, fell in love with the neighbor next door, and was carried on, and the marriage separated. They did. But lack of control, you have to control your emotions. There are times that when a husband is not as handsome as he used to be, or the wife is not as beautiful as she used to be, we could have to control the emotions and feelings. Work for the other person's better welfare. I know of a couple in another couple in our church that is very happily married, but there was one point in the marriage where he walked out on his wife, but the wife had more control than he. And she went to him and had a talk with him and cried, asked for forgiveness, and that marriage was successful even to the latter days of life where they're now dead.
And we'll get sometimes
Lack
caught
of
up
control
blaming
of
the other
emotion. We
person.
got to control our emotions.
And you can control your emotions, and I'll give you a perfect example of that. You and your spouse get in an argument on the way to church.
No arguments.
Never.
Oh, no. But the minute you get out of the car at church,
Hey.
you got your smiley face on, and you got, hi, how are you? Oh, everybody's so wonderful, and you're so loving. I guarantee you can control your emotions if you would just take your mind to it. Well, our conclusion is this. God declared, God who created heaven and earth, not the Supreme Court or
Can you tell
some...
Dad to stop saying so what? Maybe I'll,
I didn't say so what.
So what? God declared that marriage is a union of one man and one woman for life. Man does not have the right to redefine God's declaration.
That's right.
Divorce is not a part of God's design for marriage, and I hope that Jesus saying that is enough for all we need. Next week, Jesus is going to teach us God's views about divorce and celibacy, and refraining from sexual relations. Period.
Remain impure.
It's great
What
the
the
way
Catholic priests say that they do, and most of them do, but some of them don't.
oh, you mean like,
it's great to wait.
What
Made
young
it
people are
pure.
supposed to do until they get married. They're supposed to
Made
remain
it
celibate.
It's great to
They
wait.
don't do that. Yeah, okay.
That's what priests are. They're
When I was
celibate.
Yeah.
when I was up in Panama City, like me and the pastor's son and a couple guys.
You can follow us and stay in touch with what is happening with the Getting to Know Jesus Bible Study Ministry on Plaxo, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and watch our video clips on YouTube and GodTube. Getting to Know Jesus is sponsored by New Hope Gospel Ministries. If you'd like to follow along with us and start your Getting to Know Jesus Bible Study group, or just pray for us or support our ministry, you can go to www.gettingtoknowjesus.org and find all the information that we have available for you. If you look at the lower right hand corner, there's a button where you can make a safe and secure donation to the Getting to Know Jesus Bible Study Ministry. Or you can go to the order page and order your Getting to Know Jesus books for your Bible study group. Thank you for stopping by, and keep us in your prayers and let us know how we can pray for you.